Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. Today, we're going to be continuing our game development project. Current target is updating the visuals to use multi-mesh so that we can get some more performance out of it. And forgive me if the audio is misbehaving, it keeps resetting a couple of things. See if we can keep the voice properly loud. Oh dear, let's check in with the kitties here. We do have Sammy on my lap. Ember is across from the keyboard. Sky is being a nuisance over on the side of the desk. He's swatting at Sammy's tail. I think she may have had enough of his nonsense. And then we have the two siblings over on the bed. We have Mason up on the gray comforter, and we have Sherbet on the pillow. Sammy is pouting over on the side of the table. You can see her tail now. Okie dokie, let's get into this. Where were we? Okay, so we have the visuals, and we should have logic to add visuals. Then we're going to look at, we should have an entity visual object. So one of the things is we don't have a texture object. And that's going to be one of the shifts here. So we need a way of creating the entity's visuals before we create it as a raw entity, or when we create it as a raw entity. So if we look at the entity itself, it has visuals now, and we have a texture 2D. This whole initialize function is going to need to change pretty soon, because most of what it's doing is going to be splintered off. I think only the navigation agent is going to remain, and some of that could probably be moved over. Could also be moved out of the entity itself. But for now, the entity's movement logic is there, so the agent will remain. So we should have a set template values. Icon is probably going to change. So we don't really need... I don't think we need the icon, but later problem. Where are we setting that texture? Texture. So need a texture key here. No, we don't need a texture key. We can just set the entity visuals onto it. And the entity visuals will tell things, will tell the service where to render it. Hey there, Oleg. Welcome, welcome. We are just getting started, So I think we can have a set visuals function to apply this, which will allow us to dodge having to have color in some of these aspects here. What are you doing? But that's also rapidly approaching the point at which we need to differentiate between an entity and its template. Because right now, all of the visuals in the entity... No, the template can just have a key. The template can just have a key. Variable, we have... That will need to be set, so we have a texture key. String, and then in set template values, today we're getting the visuals spread out into, or split out into, a second object that will be passed to a multi-mesh manager. So that will be the thing that renders the different textures to the screen based on where the entities are. So the pattern will be the entities get moved around and they set information within their visuals object. Then when the multi-mesh gets updated in the visual pass, it will use those visual objects, not the entities themselves. We could have that visual manager referencing the entity collection, but that can create an issue, a conflict between the movement updating and the visual rendering, because they would both have to reference the same collection, and that collection is being messed with actively by the movement, because in its update cycle, the entity manager may add or remove entities from the collection, and we don't want that. We also don't want the individual meshes to have to... We don't want to have to sort them, because we want each mesh to have a collection of things related to it, and each of the entity visuals has its key, so we can group them accordingly. So, texture key equal to entity template. Entity template. Texture key. Hey there, Michael. Welcome. Okay, so we still want catalog name. I'm going to move texture key instance down here. Hey there, Lunar. You know, there'll have to be something like food related, akin to the healing option that we had in the Noida mod, the little cat treat. There'll have to be some sort of healing mechanism. Well, there doesn't necessarily have to be, but there'll probably be some food related thing. I don't know. Rotate to face should probably go into the visual object as well. So I think that needs to be part of the entity template. That doesn't. These do. I think when we're creating the texture, we could include this information and have like a little texture template. Michael, we're doing well. Bit of a sleepy day, but we managed to get started when we wanted to. Color modulate doesn't need to be in the collection. And hello, Avatar. Hello. Zoom in for folks here. I know this still won't be very visible in the short form, but if you are over in the tall format display and you would like to see it in widescreen, there is a pinned link. But we are developing a game. We're making a bullet heaven game, something in the vein of Vampire Survivors. This is largely live development, so we're not doing all the planning that we should have done. It has resulted in some pretty substantial rewrites of the core systems, and that's the stage that we're still at, is core systems. Some of the visuals are done just so that I have things that we can differentiate and that you can see the visual styles now and again. But right now we're working on keeping performance up there. So this number at the bottom is frames per second. And we can hit about 7,000 things before performance starts to just tank. And that's because there's also physics frames per second. Separate thing. Yeah, it starts to get real laggy. And that's part of what we're working on right now, because drawing to the screen is another bottleneck. Okay, there's a lot of what I have to presume is autocorrect going on in that text. But good times, you found your SIM card. So what we're doing here is that we're separating visual processing or visual handling out into another thing. So this is actually, so the animation frame offset is definitely part of the visual object. I think these two should be. But how to get them into it without storing that off? That should not happen. We have a failsafe for that. We have a if connected, release it. Oh, we don't. We don't. €100, that's not a small amount of money, is it? I thought a euro was reasonably higher, or euros were worth more than USD. If to remove dot move me dot connected wow, this is I remember the spaghetti that this was. Wow. That is... Either way, that's a lot of data money. So is it akin to you're using kind of a, not a burner phone, but a pay as you go, so you're just stocking up on a bunch of them up front? You can simplify this code noticeably. €100 a month. Oof. It's pretty pricey for a cell plan. Huh. Might be a regional thing. So much cleaner. Don't actually need to do this, but for my sanity, it is good to clean up these functions. Medic enemies might be a thing. Actual player healing, we'll have to see. Because I don't know how we're going to handle the health at this point as well. Whether we'll do the relatively opaque meter concept, or if we'll do something like, number of hearts. Anyhow. I don't know. Animation frame needs to be up here as far as our speculation here. Lifespan is still specific to... Yeah, pretty much lunar. My problem with a lot of the health bar mechanics that we see in these bullet heaven games is getting improvements to health or similar doesn't matter much. And I don't mean it doesn't have a gameplay impact. I mean, to the player, it's not always apparent what that bar means. So, like, I get plus 10 health, the bar is still full. And I can approximate it at that moment to know, oh, that increased the health bar by this percentage. But what it's going to mean to get hit is a separate thing. Whereas with effectively hearts, you can have very discrete amounts, kind of your Binding of Isaac vibe. I can tell that these hearts are armored, that these hearts are temporary, that kind of thing. Okay, so how do we... Sleep, maintenance of a sleep rotation is bad maintenance of sleep rotations is kind of the streaming stereotype, isn't it? Because I want minimal information to live in the entity. But this information has to come from somewhere. Ideally, I could get the information entirely out of a sort of like texture object. So if we look at our catalog, and we're loading the textures, we just pop them in to the array, like the actual texture object. But we could have a sort of texture wrapper that does have the texture object, but also has that meta information about it. Because animation frame size is relevant. Because then I can have larger or smaller texture frames. But I could also just say, this texture is this big, period. That limits my later use of larger textures, though, as far as the game is concerned. And there's always the option of having like a gigantic boss enemy kind of thing. So animation frame size is good. I would still want to keep a finite number of frame offsets in place. So I think a wrapper for the texture objects is a good idea. It inherits... Well, it's going to inherit nothing, but let's... Boop. Last name is texture wrapper. The human body is remarkably durable. While simultaneously being remarkably fragile. A lot of it comes down to chance. We have a variable that is a texture, which is a texture 2D. We have a variable which is a animation or a frame size. Frame size, which is an int. A variable is a... We don't need a frame offset. Because if we know the frame size, then we're set. Okay, so we have the frame size. What else did we have? Frame offset is within the handler. We have rotate to face as well. Okay, so if when we're creating something, we set the texture, we set the frame size, and we set that it's either a texture that is meant to rotate in whatever direction it needs to be, or whether it's left-right flipped. Hello, Sammy. Welcome back. Let's check in with the kitties while I pause to give Sammy back scratches. Apparently, it's bath time for Sky. There we go. So, as at the start of the stream, we do have 4 of them on camera, assuming camera 1 behaves itself. Sky up on his tree, Ember across from the keyboard, and then Mason and Sherbet on the bed. Okay, so then in the catalog, when we are loading the textures, instead of icons don't need to be preloaded like that. Textures are intrinsically a dictionary. Say variable texture wrapper. So we make a new one. Then we say texture wrapper.texture is equal to that. To that. We are going to get a break in the code because a lot of things... Well, no, that's entirely an apply template, and we'll have that color covered. Okay, so we preload the texture wrapper dot take to face is equal to false. Frame size is equal to 16. Okay, so this is the pattern now. Roll V. So, Sammy quit that. She is chewing on a power cord. A thing she should not do. Yarn object. yarn ball does rotate to face. There's going to be a period where I can't run it because of what I'm doing right now. No, with that. Okay, I think we're set for those textures now. So now we need to go in when we are loading the entity. It has a texture key. Yep, we are back to coding, Poland. Let me double check something here. Okay, yeah. We're trying to slip some games into the schedule now and again, or once again. Pretty good, Poland. We are steadily improving performance. Today is rendering performance. That's the next bottleneck in our frames per second. There is still a threshold at which, after creating about 7,000 things, it starts to slow down, but from what I could see, it was slowing down on the rendering. We are solving that now. So when we are loading an entity, all of this stuff is actually going to be loaded into it's entity visuals. Come on. Entity visual.new. Visuals texture. I have to circle that. Hello, Ember. Ma'am. Entity visuals doesn't need a texture 2D either. Yeah. It's just a key. Yeah, right. It just has a key. So we need to get the texture wrapper. I know, but I know Ember. Ember has come over for snuggles, so she likes to sit on my shoulder, so I have to do this now and again. While I'm petting her, if I look over at her like that, she'll lick my nose. She's a little sweetheart. And she has cat breath. Sadly, the noise filtering includes cat purrs. but Ember is a very snuggly cat. Sammy will sit on my lap to get attention, but she's really, don't move and scratch my back while this happens, and then I will leave. Sky will occasionally come over for pets, but for the most part, he just wants his chin scratched and he'll lay nearby if he is requesting attention. Sherbet will climb across the headrest and want me to reach behind my head and scratch him. Mason will very awkwardly either walk on my lap or I'll have to pick him up. Hey there, Drew. And Zane, welcome, welcome. And folks, if it does seem like I'm talking to somebody that you can't see in chat, it's because I'm talking to someone in the other two chats. We do have the tall form stream, the wide form stream running on YouTube, and then another wide format stream running on Twitch. Hello, Demo Frog. Welcome. Ember. Wait. Texture key. Okay. Can I... New line that mess. I just do that? I can. Good. All right. So the texture wrapper is equal to something from the catalog using the entity's texture key. Texture. Just the key. Hey there, Billboard. Welcome back, then. Each of those multi-meshes is going to have to remember the frame size when it loads it. So the visuals don't need that. Neither do they need rotating. They need facing and position, though. The color as well. Game is going well, Billboard. Game is going well. We are optimizing rendering right now. Set position in here anywhere. We need to make sure that when the visuals are loaded up, that the entity's position is relayed. We can't render right now. there'll be a problem with that, but we are working on getting to it. We can get to about, let's say, 5,000 to 7,000 objects before frames per second starts to noticeably suffer. It drops from 30 to 25, probably around 5,000 objects. But the rendering is eating upwards of 30% of the processing time. So the hope is by switching over to this multi-mesh instance 2D, we will get the kind of performance benefits that I saw when doing some test coding. Yes, 7,000 is a whole lot. And the idea is if it will operate at 30 frames a second at 7 to 10,000, then we don't have to worry anymore. And that it will run at a minimum 30 frames per second at all times otherwise. So we just get the texture key in visuals. Otherwise, visuals always gets right there. That's where we'll have to make sure to update it. Right there. Well, I appreciate that, Billboard. It is not in any way necessary, but if you like. So we need to make sure that this constantly gets updated. Probably at the end of the entity move, we'll do that. How does it work? Through a great deal of effort. I still need to get back into producing a couple of short forms, at least one weekly. But given how much coding we're doing, that's going to be the primary source. Since I want to get some gaming streams back in, I should be able to get 1 or 2 out of those as well. Those don't take a great deal of time, especially if I limit the number of them that I create. I have a lot of the process automated. But I do want to get those progress update videos. And a lot of that is going to be, once I've got this optimization done, showing some of the bonkers things you can do with composite movement. Okay. And then in entity move, start moving. We call all of the movement methods. Position, jewels, facing is equal to target movement. So eventually what we're going to do is all of this stuff will be moved into the navigation callback, but we're currently trying to check it without navigation because only the enemies use navigation. I want to make it so that the bullets won't use this and that the enemies do, but that's an extra performance hit, and if we can get everything else narrowed down, we can work on getting the navigation system cleaned up, whether that needs to be its own thread or whatever. Okay. So as a color, if we ever need to change that, it has facing, which we will need to use if it is supposed to be flipped or not. No, the enemies in the game won't be cats. The visuals that you've been able to see in the game up until now, the yarn ball and the homing mouse and the character, the little cat bot, the Nyanite, will be actual things in the game. But exactly what they'll be used for as far as the blobs, that's different. But the wind-up mouse and the yarn ball are going to be weapons in the game. The actual enemies, again, that's theme, and you'll get to see that when we get there. Okay, so we have that in place. Then if we go into the collision zone for now, and we go into process, physics area isn't going to get updated. We're going to call entity draw. Okay, yeah. The scale is times equal -1. We have to remember that when we are doing our rendering in the multi-mesh. Hey there, half pint. Let's log textures. Visuals. E dot texture. I do have a Twitch account, Billboard. That is here. We are cleaning up some of this stuff. Close you, keep you open. All right, Lunar Waffles, have a good day. I've not made any other games, Billboard. This is the first one. Textures is a dictionary, and well, let's reload that just to be sure. Let's find out. Nope. So what doesn't it like about this? Load textures. Key is a string. Blob, the mouse, the yarn, the Nyanite. All right, one more time. Go to globals, to our catalog, then into textures. Those are key differentiated. And then entity template. Oh. That is of type key. Okay, entity template. No texture key. Okay. Catalog. Create entity. Okay, so when we call create entity, right here, this should be a texture key, which is a string. So then we should have a whole bunch of calls to create entity to update. So we're updating this so that this is passing in a string value, which it will use subsequently. Oh, it's just the key. Wrong variable. Your wrapper. Hey there, Erebus. Okay. So when we're loading a texture, oh, that's the key. We know the texture key because we have the texture key. Emperor Sky and Sherbet. You're missing Sammy. Alright. This is back to the base that we've got. You can see we're starting to get frame hitches at about 5,000 objects. And crossing into 7,000, we get substantial hitches. And today, we are trying to remove rendering as an issue. Oh. No, when we draw... No, we should hold on to that. So the multi-mesh will have the wrapper, so we don't need any of that. Or that. Or that. Now we're going to return here. So template values once we're ready, once we've loaded it up. Do Mesh Manager, add visuals. Set move signal. function. Emit with self. And in the entity, when we send the remove signal, we are also going to tell our visuals to send remove signal. We'll cascade, but we'll see how this plays. So then, let's see, set template values. We added that in the mesh manager. We connect the remove signal, and on visual remove me, we call remove visual on the past and visual. Yes. Okay, so our entity template should have a texture key now. Yes, so this should be returning. Should have a get function on this so that we don't have a method call here. Have texture key set anywhere up here. We don't need to keep the texture key of the entity. No, we need that. We need that. All right, Erebus. Thanks for swinging through. Then in the catalog, something's going haywire, and it's got to be one of those simple, silly things. In our catalog, in textures, almost certainly Nyanite here. Oh. Entity visual. Oh, it should have visible. Entity in its initial set template values when it initially creates it. No, that will be when it is initialized. Visible is equal to true. Getting much lower FPS right now. Well, that's because we have a whole bunch of errors. The visible instance count is 0, then it's having some problems. Have any way for us to tell it to not render? Because it straight up doesn't like this when we set this to 0. Check on that. We can't mess with instance count. Our visible instance count is greater than the actual instance count. So the actual instance count is 0. Hash.instance count is greater than 0. Still getting a decay. But I think we are holding steadier. Now, that doesn't mean that it's actually working. We do need to work on our shutdown code as well. Okay. Okay, we're never getting to the iterating on the render loop part, which means we never have a visible count here. Back, pause, look at our mesh manager. Mesh isn't being set up properly. Because none of them are incrementing here. We are getting to this, so let's go through. Create our mesh instance, we load it up. Like our texture is the nano blob. Create the multi-mesh, make a quad mesh. Now we're going to look at, so we have a mesh instance, it has a multi-mesh, but its mesh is not being set. It's defaulting to a plain mesh. Mesh. Okay, it is getting a mesh set now. So then in Mesh Manager, we're still never getting into that. Well, thank you, Pixel Knight. I appreciate it. I am trying to make it a little more visible to folks. So if you're comfortable reading the code, that you have an opportunity to do so. I find that I do get pretty picky about legibility in my code. Oh, okay. We're never actually adding the visual to the mesh, though. We're never increasing its size. Process. So when we're creating these meshes, we need to make sure that the mesh instance has instance dot what's it called? Instance. No, that's the mesh, not the multi-mesh instance. That doesn't help that we were not setting the mesh instance to the multi-mesh. That is plummeting. We're also we could also see it. Okay. They're centered on 0. Here, let me see if we can spot it again. Okay, so the problem is that the mesh manager is, very briefly, you could see it here. The mesh manager is centering itself. It's creating those meshes, not on the game object. So that's a hitch. That's a hitch. How do we do? How do we do? Welcome back. We are overdue for a quick break, though. I'm going to do that and be right back, folks. Okay, we're back. Okay, FPS is tanking faster. Oh, no, that's because we have a bunch of errors. Show me the errors. Okay, I see that. So in our ready function, over, go into process. Just going to do that. Okay, we're getting lurches at particular numbers of entities. Let's smooth that out. You can see them rendering in waves here. Catalog, load items, mouse, burst. These hitches are there's a 1 second delay in between adding the entities here. We are occasionally getting weird hitches in the update in the rendering of the number. Okay, starts to slow down. Oh no, that's a reason. That's a reason. We don't need 10,000, but the reason was our instance count was being exceeded in the mesh manager. Right here. So let's bump that out to 50,000 here, and then in the catalog, in our positioner for this, we're going to say 50,000. That should never happen in the actual game. And go! So there are hitches during the creation of them. But we're busy moving them, so we can't actually add any more. They will get added. Okay, now we're going to cap it at 10,000. We do need to work on that shutdown code. And again, you can see them fade out here. That at 10,000. And our entity manager. Entity pool that we're capping it. If I recall, Tass, Flexi is trying to play EDF on Inferno difficulty. And if I recall correctly, they skipped from normal to Inferno, which means they have, I think, 2 levels of difficulty of missing HP. So one hit kill is definitely a possibility with some of those enemies. And you don't get any pity loot for failing a mission in Inferno. Where were we setting that? Is it in the spawn manager? Yeah, it's in the spawn manager. Which exists somewhere. No, I changed that. It doesn't have a limiter. Yeah, Inferno is really difficult if you try to get into it before you've leveled up. People sometimes do that in order to get the weapons early, do an early mission, get a couple of Inferno grade starter weapons, and then play offline. Because you can be super OP doing that. But Inferno difficulty in EDF 6, and EDF in general, not messing around. And EDF 6's difficulty is definitely higher already than the prior ones. Process. Move is fine. Size. Max entities. And we'll just straight up not add them. Okay, it should stop at 10,000. The hitches that you're seeing in that number updated are almost certainly it taking a moment to finish movement. Because it cannot add entities until it's done moving. Okay, it is still exceeding the limit. It should do that. See them fade out in the corner there. So the mesh manager I need to move into we need a way of getting the mesh manager to have visual updates, but for it to exist within the game object. So I need the idea of an individual mesh manager, but with the ability to add visuals to that individual mesh manager globally. Alternately, no. Yeah. Needs to be when the entity is created that it has its visuals. And even here, the entity manager doesn't set those. And the mesh manager, during its process, its children are there. We could go over all of its meshes and still deal with that, because it would have a node that is its mesh manager, and then it would still have the meshes referenced off of them. And we could subscribe to its event. Because if I want to be able to see them, we need to put them into the actual world. And we also need to properly... Oh no, the entities will be created regardless, because we're going through entity pool to create them. So we go in, we call add entity. Are we getting... process. Entity pool.size. Not ever adding to the entity pool. So how is the game getting any value to put here or here? We're not even, so we're never updating created. And we're never adding anything to the entity pool. Enter dot. I don't know if that's actually thread safe, but we're about to find out. Oh no, it's not that number. What is that number? What is that first number? Oh, okay. It's the number of things in the enemy zone and the bullet zone. We should never be adding to those. It's definitely skewing the results if we add them to that. So you can see the number is hitching there because it does need time to process all of the new entities being added. Okay, so we are no longer creating new entities. Now, if we watch, we have this gigantic array of them sitting there in the upper left corner. It's again because this object exists in global space, not in game world space. It's how to get this node to be processed so that we can cover what it's supposed to be doing. Because in the process function of the mesh manager, that's where we're going in and finding out, like, okay, is there anything to render? And if there is stuff to render, we need to make sure that we update the visible instance count. So we could have the idea of the like submesh manager that is the actual thing that we would render. And then anytime we start up the mesh manager, we tell it, here is your submesh manager to interact with. Then we don't have to worry about waiting to remove them from the tree just because they exist in global space. They'll be removed from the tree during that step. Child node, we're going to add a node 2D. And we are going to, in our 2D manager, we look at that node 2D. Okay, so we cannot attach to its process. We need the idea of a submesh manager. Because then entities can just pass that along without us needing to have an intermediary. Okay. Render, it extends node 2D. Yep. Okay, the entire purpose of this thing is to house the process function that this used to. Pretty much everything this one is doing we do here. The only difference is that when we call, it won't do add visuals the same way. Sorry, it will do add visuals the same way. It's that only the mesh manager actually gets called. Hello, Deku. Welcome. So add visuals will call add visual on the mesh renderer. So in general, folks, this isn't a channel oriented towards children. It doesn't mean we do adult content here, but I cannot guarantee that the content might or may be viewed as unsuitable. If you are under 18 and you make it an issue in one form or another, then you may have to be removed from the channel. But if you don't make it an issue and you don't make a big issue of you being under 18, then there won't be a problem. So let's not make it a problem. Just a general reminder. Okay, so a mesh render has pretty much everything that a mesh manager does. And it's ready, it's going to populate itself. In its process, it's going to mess with all of that stuff. Scaling vector. Vector 2. 6.0. If entity visual dot facing dot x is less than 0, then scaling times equals -1. That should be flip the sprite. Should be. I don't know if that will play nice with a quad mesh. We're gonna find out. We may need to change the scaling before we do this stuff. Again, we'll find out. Wow. Renderer. We're going to keep clear visuals as well. Doesn't need a visual array. Doesn't connect the remove signal. If render, nope. is valid. Okay, we're dealing with a node, so we have to check that it's still a valid reference before we mess with it. Same thing here. Press start. No, we've got a little bit to go yet. Got about an hour to go yet before we would stop normally. And then we don't have to worry about re-exited connect. Exited. I'm hoping that this will count null and prevent it. We are now optimizing the rendering logic. So then in the game object, create a mesh. No. Let's. Instantiate it. And then in the game's ready function, integer set renderer that for now. So you can see there's a little bit of a hitch here. It's rendering the entire texture and not just part of it. Nice, nice. Now we need to figure out... And then in the mesh renderer, in a mesh renderer, okay, that's why. Okay. It's the entire size of the texture that this needs to be set to. So the Nyanite has 4 rows. So it is 64, and it's 6 columns, so 96. And then subdivide width. And then center offset we might have to fiddle with here. Okay, the mice are being overscaled. Process, we are going to that. Still getting that scaling being wrong. Extra weird. Okay, so what we're working on here is getting the rendering to happen correctly. Oh. Catalog. Load textures. So we need to get the frame size and the texture size out of this. Frame size should be a vector too as well. There we go. I think it's a vector 2i actually. Let's force that just in case. So then for each multi-mesh, wrapper is equal to catalog. So sure. Wrapper dot texture size. Okay. Is there a way for us to... I Sixteen. We'll have to kind of macro this. So I don't have to call this individual song and dance. It should happen naturally each time just by like calling into a method and saying the frame size is this, this is the texture, this is the rotate to face. Okay, we're still not getting the subdivide on them. Hello there, Max. Welcome. This is a bullet heaven style game that we're working on. So, kind of like how Vampire Survivors operates. Oh. Let's change that. Don't know if this will actually work, but maybe we'll get away with it. No, that didn't really change anything. Mesh, and then we look at the mesh. Hmm. if we go into the Nyanite, into its mesh, let's see here, 16 by 16. Okay, what are we missing to get a frame chunk in here? Because right now it's like it's not scaling everything properly. And the transform is skewed. Else one. Let's get this rotation corrected here. Okay, so the visual is set to rotate, but the so that's the visual, but it's the texture wrapper that has rotate to face. And I don't want to get that wrapper every time. Catalog, textures, nope, key. We don't need it if our instance count is not greater than 0. And we don't need it if the visible instance count Visible visuals dot size 0. Texture wrapper, just in case. If texture wrapper dot rotate to face should work. It's a float because it is a angle in radians. Zero. Still upside down. Right. Angle. Transform. Okay, it's just a struct. Right. This for a moment. Ready function when we're creating all of this. So the spatial coordinates are noticeably off. See, this is correct. We don't want the space to be scaled. We want the textures in it to be scaled. Don't really know what this is. There's got to be a way to alter the texture as well. So I wonder if I have to get mesh instance and mess with that accordingly. Crying about, huh? If wonder if we just gonna purge it out here. Nope. I don't get why this works, but that doesn't. All right. So the missing pieces right now are getting the individual sprite frames and getting them sized properly. That's where we need to be. All right, I need to do some more research on this. So we're going to call it here for the day. So we have the rendering performance and the generation performance where we want it to be. We're holding pretty steady. Movement can still get choked at about, it starts to stutter after a bit. But we've got everything kind of tuned pretty well. We will need to figure out how to clean it up further. But if we limit our number of entities down substantially, we hardly even need like 5,000. We can greatly mitigate the performance costs of a lot of this stuff. Even 3 to 4,000 is pretty good. But the next thing we've got to figure out how to do is get those animation frames in there. I thought those subdivisions were what were supposed to happen, but I think that is the quad mesh just saying how many vertices do we want to have kind of thing. And that's not actually what we're looking for. We're looking for messing with the textures draw region kind of stuff. And that may be where we need to live, is we need to keep a reference to the multi-mesh instance, extract the multi-mesh during the rendering, and periodically slice up the texture. We'll see. We'll see how that go. If you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, follow, and subscribe. It helps the channel grow and will help you find this kind of content more often in the future. With all that said, I hope the rest of your day is good, and I will see you next time.